all the code in place to have our new DB sets and everything for provinces and cities and all that. Now we're going to actually implement the actual cascading drop-down list. So for that, I'm going to come in here. I'm going to need the doctor controller. That's where, of course, we are relating the city information is to the doctor. And along with that, I'll be eventually needing all of the views related to doctor, right? So I'll have those ready to go as well. So starting in the controller, though, I'll go Control MO, just shrink everything down and allow me to come in here and start adding the code. I usually do this, of course, after all the standard like edit, delete, and so on and so forth, right? Okay. All right, so in here then, I'm going to start off with my select list for provinces. It's pretty standard, right? So nothing too exciting here. By the way, we didn't have select lists like that. We had our ones for specialty. That was just for the for adding that specialty for the doctor, but that wasn't a typical situation, right? So here we have our standard way of doing a select list, province select list, right? We pass the selected ID, so that is if we do want to pre-select one of the options out of the list, that gives us an ability to do so. Pretty straightforward. Provinces, order by the name, right? Using the ID and the name. Of course, remember the ID is an actual string, 2-letter code. But on that, it's pretty standard stuff. Now, when we do the select list for our city list, that's going to be a little different, right? Because we want to be able to implement a cascade delete here. So we're going to be able to pass in that string, the province ID, as well as optionally, we can say this is the particular city we want selected out of our drop-down list, right? So we start off with a basic query, from C in cities, select C, right? That gives us, again, our iQueryable, so we know that we can add more where clauses and things to it before we actually execute it. Then we decide, okay, do we actually have a province ID to filter by, right? If we don't, then we just skip over this and we're done. We're just going to go and get all the cities. That's how it's set up right now. But if we do have a province code to filter by, then I add a .where clause here where the province matches, right? And that will filter the data when I go to actually get it. And that happens down here. When we call our query, we can apply the order by at that point in time. It will execute the query and send the data to our select list, right? And of course, then we also have our data value field, which is the ID, and the data text field, our summary property, and away we go. Of course, the last argument there is the selected value, and we got that from up here. All right, so the only twist there is that we're actually optionally giving something to filter by. All right. Now, we don't have a populate drop-down list defined here yet either because we weren't doing anything. We didn't have foreign keys really to worry about. So now we're going to call populate drop-down lists, okay, passing in the doctor as we often do. But I do have a decision to make here, which I don't normally worry about, right? If I'm in an edit mode, in other words, the doctor already has a city assigned, okay? If there is a value to the city ID for the doctor, right, then I know that I actually want to probably pre-select the same city and make sure my provinces are already filtered for the province that the city was in, right? So I'll call my province select list, okay, pass in the province ID, and when I call city select list, I pass both the province ID and the city ID. And that way everything is set up for any existing values that are there. The else, okay, I'm just starting from scratch, so I just pass null to everything here, so I'll just get the full list of provinces and cities, and away I go. All right. Now, so working here in this controller still, there's one more thing that we're going to have to add, right? I finally, remember we did all that work separating out, as we've talked about in the past, separating out the whole creation of the select list from our populate drop-down list, which basically calls our code to create select lists, right, for putting it into view data. But we also want to, as we've seen, sometimes return our select list not in view data, but directly to a request for a JSON result, right? So we have a JSON result here, get cities, okay, where we can pass the province ID and then get the city select list, okay, filtered by the province, and away we go. All right, so now we can start putting this in place. So I'm going to go right up to the create get, first of all, right? So our first create here, the get for it. And all we really need to do here is call our populate drop-down list. Now we're creating a new one, so there's nothing to pass inside the brackets. Okay, coming down to the post for create, right? A couple things to do here. One is, of course, if we're actually creating a new record and we want to supply the value, right, for the city, well, we have to deal with that here. Remember what this does, okay? This is our white list. We're saying that when we build our doctor object, only allow these properties to be set. Well, if we don't add city ID in there, then we will never ever get the value being populated in the doctor object, right? So I have to add that to the white list, city ID, okay? And of course, if we're redisplaying back to the screen, once more, I need to prepare or populate my drop-down list, but this time I will have a doctor object, right, to use as I do that preparation. Okay, now we might as well continue on with the create, and so we'll come down to the views now for doctor, and I'll get the create view open. Okay, so here we are. Here we are, first name, middle name, last name, right? So after the last name, that's probably where I'll put it before the upload documents. I'm going to put in here inputs for both province and city. Now, our first iteration of this, okay, we're going to set up so we return all the cities, right? And then we filter it if they choose a province first, right? So we could just go directly to the city list and choose the city if we wanted to. And of course, it knows what province it's in, right? But if we choose the province first, then we'll filter the selection of cities, and away we go. So that's what we've done here. So notice that the province has a option here, right, that returns null for all provinces. That's a pretty standard approach we've done, right? And then our city will just have all the data for the cities. Now, one more thing that we're going to do here, though, to really make the filtering work, okay, is down here in the scripts. We're going to do this as a basically as a AJAX request, right? Well, gosh, do we have the code around that looks after that? We already do. Look at that. Our refresh drop-down list. We're reusing the same code, okay, this very reusable little function we added basically earlier on, right? Remember how it works. We just say, okay, which select element or drop-down list, okay, where's it going to get its data from, and our different options about, you know, whether we're going to show a prompt and things like that, right? Well, we have to make sure that's there. Now, I already have it. So it's in my copy-paste code, but I don't need to put it in twice, right? Once is enough. I don't need it a second time. But I will add this custom bit of code here, where what I'm doing is I'm watching for a change to the province ID. That's the ID of our select list or drop-down list for provinces. So if there's a change there, right, then I'll go. Notice that we don't do any prevent default. We're still going to let it do whatever it wants to do. But we're going to grab that event, go and grab the value now that they've changed it, and that's our selected province, okay? Now the value will be what? It will be our two-letter code, right, for the province ID, right? Then we build our URL that we're going to go to the doctor controller. We're going to call that get cities. Remember, that's the one we just added, the last one we added. Oh, it's at the bottom there. But anyway, that's the one that just goes and does the query, right? We pass the province ID equals, okay, and our selected value, right? And that gives the JSON result action all the information it needs to return the filtered list of cities, okay? So that's our call to refresh drop-down list for our select called city ID, our URL as shown above, right? And, you know, if there's nothing comes back, I'm going to show no cities in the selected province. And that's going to happen because I don't have a complete set of data here, do I, right? I do have some provinces that I haven't actually seeded any data for in terms of cities yet. And just for fun, I have that last argument there is true, so it will fade out and fade back in. All right. Well, let's go back and let's talk about the edit process. It's almost the same. If we come down here, first of all, to the get for edit, right? When we go and we retrieve, right, our doctor, well, we want to make sure that we have included, right, the city as well. So I'll add my dot include for the city. And before we return, we want to call populate drop-down list. So we have the data appropriately ready to show. in our select controls. Okay. Now, next is the edit post. And remember this one, of course, we do the edit business a little differently, right? We go and we get the record from the database instead of building the object from the parameters passed in. So once more, make sure we do our .include in this link. And what about the bind, that whitelist idea? Well, remember how that works here is we use try update model, right? So we'll have to make sure that we do add the ability to change or update the selected city, right? So we add in city ID in here, right, when we try to update the model. If it's not mentioned here, there's no way that we can change it. And finally, we have to, of course, call our populate drop-down lists, right before we return, if we're in a situation where we're going to be redisplaying the current selections for our doctor to update. Now, let's come to the edit view to work along with that. And basically the exact same code that we put in create goes in here at this point in time, right? So I'm going to put in the exact same province and city inputs into edit. And even the same JavaScript, okay, works the same way for us. So coming down here, we already have the refresh drop-down list. So I just need to add this event handler to handle changing the province ID. Okay, now we could run it now, but I might as well finish getting everything ready because obviously, we've added these new properties. We're going to want to show that somewhere, right? So it's not a big deal. We'll first of all come to controller. Let's go right to the top again, Control MO, scroll up to the index, okay? We're going to show it on the index. So what do we need to do here? Well, of course, when we go and we get the doctors, okay, multiple this time, plural doctors, we're going to make sure we include the city in our link query, right? That's all I have to do in the actual controller, but in the index view, we need somewhere to show it. So I think I've got enough room here. I can add a new column. So I'll put the table heading tags for my new column right here. And that's just using display name for my city ID. And then in the corresponding spot inside the actual table down here, I'll just put display for, okay? But my display for is going to be, I'm going to use the city dot summary, right? Show that summary information. Okay, so that takes care of the index. So I just have the detail and delete views, right? I should for each of them as well. So let me come down. There's so much code, right? Here's details. So if I come in here, once more, I can add my dot include. And you know what? I'm just going to do the same thing for our delete as well, right? In both the get and the post, which of course we actually have renamed to delete confirmed, right? So we have the link there. And then in both of the views, the detail and delete views, we'll just add that little bit of code then to show it along with everything else. So in the details view, probably right after last name again, I'll throw it in here, right? Just to match the style of everything else, same column widths and so on, the city, and then our city summary. And I'll do the same thing on the delete view. Okay, all right. I think that's far enough. We can actually give it a test. Drum roll. Okay, we're up and running, so I'll just log in as an admin. Let's come to doctors. And there, see, no city specified, right? We added that as a, you know what I mean. We added that so it would be shown if there was nothing there, right? Okay, so let's actually, I can click the create. Here's our list. Now notice that I have all cities available already. That's all the cities in the database. But if I select a province, right, such as Ontario, ooh, look at that, it faded in and out. then of course I only have my filtered list of just cities in Ontario, right? If I go to a different, like New Brunswick, look at that, no cities in the selected province. BC, oh, I only have one, right? If I go back to all provinces, then I do return to the list showing all of them, right? Is there anything? Yeah, gosh. So Ontario is the only one that I have multiple choices in. I should seed a little more data. All right, so that shows you how that works. So let's just come back again to the doctor list. Now, if I click edit, you see it's working exactly the same way, right? I have them all. So that's the final change. I can make this without stopping. No, I'm going to stop. It just gives me more room to work over here, right? Often I just want to share with you a slightly different approach, right? Let's not show any data in the second drop-down list until after they've selected a value from the first one. This is often how it's set up to work this way in most examples you'll find out there, right? So we may as well have a look at how we go about that. So what I have to do is I just come down to the city select list, okay? City select list, so here we go. And remember what we did is we had our basic query and then we decided if we were going to add the filter. Well, I'm just going to go ahead and add the filter all the time. So I can just do that by modifying the link query up here, add that where clause. Notice that just for fun, I wrote this one using the query expression syntax instead of the extension method syntax, but you could go back and forth. It's no big deal, right? Now I don't need this if at all because I'm always going to be filtering by province. I could delete it, but I'm just going to comment it out for now in case I might want to switch back at some point in time. And that's the only real difference there that I have to make. But I do want to handle things a little differently inside the actual views themselves. So if I come to the create view, right, back up here where we had our two inputs, okay, right now, I want to point this out, with value equals an empty string here for all provinces, that actually, of course, returns null, right? We've seen that before. We've taken advantage of that a few times. So that gives a value of null for this selected option. Well, that's not going to work for us. We don't want any null values. We want something that is an actual value. So I could put in, I don't know, something like ZZ, right? Because that doesn't, not likely ever going to be a province named ZZ. I have to have something. So, one thing I thought of is I could just put a 0. It just has to be a string, right? And that will actually take care of, I can put 2 of them if I wanted to, it doesn't matter, right? And that'll never be a province, so I'm pretty safe going with 0, 0 there, right? And that way it avoids having a null value for all provinces, which I just kind of want to avoid having a null. Now down in the city, okay, I'm going to do the same kind of thing we're doing up here, having a default option at the top of the list, right? This one is going to be the value 0. It's going to be select a province first, right? Okay, and the only other change I'm going to make here is just down in my my refresh DDL. I'm going to actually just change the prompt here. I want to tell them select a province with cities first, right? That just tells them instead of no cities, pick a province with cities, and that's just I think a clarification in this case. Now we'll do the exact same changes in the edit as well. So let me come to edit. There we go. And coming up here, right? Okay, so I can put my 0 or 0, 0. And down here, we'll add the extra line here, our select a province first prompt. And that's all they'll get at first until they pick a province. Only then will it go and get data for the selected province. All right, so let's just give that a try and we'll just see the difference. Okay. No, I should have checked off to remember me, but it only lasts for a little while anyway. All right, so now when I come to create new, see, I have nothing here, just select a province first. Till I pick a province, then I have all those provinces. If I pick a different province, right, then I have those ones. If I go back to all provinces, then once more, I'm prompted to select a province with cities first. Perfect, that's what I want. Let's just check out the edit process. Again, select a province first, right? So if I pick Vancouver, okay, I can save that. And by the way, you see even now it says city, Vancouver, BC. If I go back to the doctor's list, right, there it is. So instead of no city specified, we actually are showing the value, right? Just one more, let me point out that if I go to Ontario, pick St. Catharines, okay, then we're good here. And even if I go to delete, I'm seeing the city information here now. And it's kind of neat that this is pulling it all from the one class, you know, this separate ON is stored right in with the St. Catharines because it is the actual foreign keys primary key, right? There we go. All right, so that finishes the demo. So you might find that a useful technique. It's the kind of thing that's easily implemented. And, you know, if you need more than, you know, two, one filtering the next and then so on, you can just keep on continuing, daisy chain it down through and then, you know, make them select one before the next, before the next, before the next.